Looking to automate your fuel needs and survival without having to build a labor-intensive farm? This smart and compact reactor unit can run in the background at your base, generating a steady supply of fuel, up to 44 dried kelp blocks per hour. Welcome to Cube Figured, I'm the Tuned Cube. There are a lot of different fuels that can be used for smelting in Minecraft, but the dried kelp block is one of the best. It's an efficient fuel, capable of smelting 20 items each. Only the block of coal and lava bucket can smelt more. But its major advantage is that it's relatively easy to produce fully automatically. All you need is a kelp farm, a smoker, and an autocrafter. Now, you might think I'm crazy for saying kelp is a great fuel when you have to smelt it before you can use it as fuel to smelt other things, but hear me out. Since one dried kelp block can smelt 20 items, it only takes 9 dried kelp pieces to smelt 20 raw kelp, which produces a surplus of 11 dried kelp pieces. Feeding the dried kelp output back into the smoker creates a self-sustaining chain reaction that will carry on producing fuel indefinitely, as long as we don't waste fuel by burning it when there is no raw kelp ready to be smelted. There are lots of designs for kelp-powered fuel farms out there, but most of them either waste fuel or rely on overloading the smoker with more raw kelp than it can actually smelt. I wanted to come up with a smart system that actually regulates the inflow of raw kelp to completely eliminate fuel waste. I also wanted to design on the smallest possible scale, using only a single smoker, to make it compatible with smaller kelp farms and achievable in the early or mid-game when you're looking to upgrade from mining coal, chopping wood, or cutting bamboo for fuel. What I came up with is this reactor unit, as I'm calling it, which works in both Java and Bedrock. I'm going to take you through how to build this and how it works, but it does not include the kelp farm that you'll need to supply it. There are all kinds of different kelp farm designs out there, and you can decide which one you want to build, or come up with your own. Just keep in mind that this unit is limited by the speed of this single smoker, so you don't need a kelp farm faster than 720 items per hour. For example, this one here is a scaled down version of a design by ilmango. It produces about 660 kelp per hour, so close to the max speed of our reactor unit. I've seen something like this one on YouTube more times than I can count, so I have no idea who to credit. But if you wanted something on the smaller side, this produces about 44 kelp per hour. Here are all the materials you'll need to build the reactor unit. I'll be using different colors of concrete, but you can use whatever solid building blocks you like. Now, as far as dimensions, the unit is 5 blocks wide on this side, 6 blocks wide on this side, and 5 blocks in height. And I've marked out a space over here, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to begin with the auto-crafting component of the system. So go ahead and place a block here, 1 block away from the corner on this shorter side. And then go ahead and break down 2 blocks here so that we can place an observer pointing downwards against that block. Go ahead and fill that back in. That observer, you can see now, is in that corner. We're just going to place another observer pointing away from that one into another block. Now we're going to take our comparators, we're going to place one on top of that observer, one on top of this block, and they're both going to be pointing into a piece of redstone dust on top of that observer. Now we can place our crafter on top of that block pointing upwards, and against the back of this comparator here, we're going to place our composter. And we're going to fill this all the way to the top. You can use whatever plant materials you have lying around. I'm just going to use moss. And once we get that texture there, that indicates that it is full. And that is our auto crafter. So currently there's nothing in this crafter, so there's no output being taken from this comparator. But because of the composter being full, it is getting a power level of 8 for this redstone dust here. If we were to fill this composter up with our 9 dried kelp pieces, or if I were to just simulate that by filling this up, now this is getting a power level 9. When it changes from 8 to 9, the observer reads that update, and transfers the power to this block here, which activates the crafter and crafts the block. In order to get our dried kelp pieces into the crafter here, we're going to place a hopper into the side of it, on the same side as the composter here, another hopper into the side of that one, and then on top of that we'll place our smoker. So once the smoker cooks up the dried kelp, these hoppers will extract it and push it into the crafter. Now we need to place a hopper into the side of the smoker here. That's going to refuel it. And we're going to take our dried kelp blocks from this crafter here. We're going to put a upwards facing dropper on top of it. So when the crafter dispenses the dried kelp blocks, they'll be pushed into this dropper. And then we are going to simply have the dropper push the items up into that hopper, across, and back into the smoker here. And you'll also want to make sure that this hopper here is not a downwards facing hopper, but a sideways facing hopper. So we're going to come out, break that one, and continue our hopper line in this direction. And that will be where our excess dried kelp blocks, our surplus, is stored. So you can even break that one and place like a chest or a barrel here if you want to store those right here, or you can continue that hopper line to wherever you want those to be stored. Now we still need to power this dropper here in order to get the dried kelp blocks from the dropper up into this hopper here. And to do that, we're simply going to take the update of this redstone dust here and read it with another observer pointing upwards and one pointing across from that one to power our dropper here. Now that we've connected the hoppers for removing output and adding fuel to the smoker, we need to connect our hoppers for inputting the raw kelp. And to do that, we are simply going to place a hopper going into the top of the smoker here. And then we're going to add 3 more hoppers. One is going to go into the side of that one. And then we're going to turn and go 2 in this direction. So if you're looking at the top, the hopper arrangement should look like this. Now, if we didn't want to regulate the inflow of kelp at all, we would be done at this point. You could hook up your kelp farm to this line here to deposit the kelp into the smoker here, and the rest of the system would just auto-craft those dried kelp blocks and refuel the smoker. However, in order to prevent wasted fuel, we want to prevent the kelp from reaching the smoker until there is enough of it built up. To do that, we are going to release the kelp in batches, and we're going to measure those batches in this hopper right to the left of the smoker. We're going to lock this hopper with a redstone block. That way, items can flow into it, but it cannot push those items into this hopper here and over into the smoker. Now, I mentioned earlier that one dried kelp block can smelt 20 items. So, we want our batch to be a multiple of 20. And fortunately for us, a completely full hopper holds 16 times 20 items. So that's a perfect way to measure a batch, and it's really easy to measure when a hopper is completely full. Now, the hopper right above the smoker is the other important hopper for our purposes, and this is essentially going to be a buffer. So because the hoppers can move items into the smoker faster than the smoker can cook them, there's going to be some buildup here, and when the hopper here is empty, that's going to tell us that we're ready for that next batch to come in. Next, we're going to place 2 blocks here, one next to the dropper, one next to the observer, and to detect what's going on inside of this hopper, we're going to place a comparator facing away from it, and that's going to go into a repeater. Now we also want to detect what's going on in the hopper next to it, but this is going to be a little bit different. We're going to place 2 blocks coming out like this. We're going to have our comparator reading what's going on inside of that hopper, but we're also going to have another comparator pointing into the side of that one. And this comparator is going to be reading a copper bulb. And you can place that right up against the back of the comparator here. And for now we want this bulb to be on, so we're going to give it a bit of a pulse to turn it on. And now we have a full power reading coming out of this comparator going into the side of this comparator. What this means is this comparator here is only going to give us a signal output if the hopper is completely full. And we're actually going to invert that signal by placing a block against the edge of the comparator here and a torch on the other side of it. Now we're going to place a piston in a moment that's going to move this redstone block and unlock this hopper, but only if certain conditions are met. Those conditions are if this hopper here has a full batch measured in it, and if the smoker is ready to accept a new batch, which is indicated by this hopper being empty. So if this hopper is full and this hopper is empty, we're going to move this redstone block. And we're going to detect that with a logic circuit called an AND gate. So we're going to have a block here that this repeater is going into. We're going to put redstone dust on top of it. Then we're going to put a block on top of this torch here, and a torch on this side of that block, facing back towards the redstone block. Then we can simply place our piston against the side of that torch, and that piston is now positioned to push the redstone block in this direction. So when this repeater is unpowered, which it is now, and this torch is unpowered, which it isn't, this torch would turn on, extending the redstone block and unlocking the hopper underneath. And since at some point we'll want to reset this system, we're going to place another piston on top of this last hopper here, facing the other direction. Now when this redstone block gets pushed over to the right here, unlocking that hopper underneath, it's then going to lock this hopper here, which is going to prevent any items from spilling over into what we've measured while it's being sent into the smoker here. So at this point we can detect a full batch of kelp and release that batch into the smoker. But we still need a way to determine when we are ready to start measuring the next batch and relock the measurement hopper here. And to do that, we will want to know when this hopper is empty instead of when it is full. And since we're already measuring when it's full with this comparator here, being compared to this signal, we can simply turn off this bulb, and instead of getting a signal when the hopper is full, we'll get a signal when the hopper is empty. So to turn off this bulb, we want to detect when the redstone block gets moved over to this position. So we'll place a block against the side of this hopper here with a repeater facing away from it. And that's going to go into a redstone lamp. We're going to detect the powered or unpowered state of the redstone lamp with an observer pointing out of it. And then we'll place a redstone dust on top of the lamp here that will get powered by the observer and turn off the bulb. And it will also turn the bulb back on again when the redstone block gets shifted back to this position. Now we need a way to take our signal for when the measuring hopper there is empty and route that signal over to this piston on the other side of the system here. Now you could basically do that with some redstone wire that loops around the outside here, but we want to stick within this existing footprint that we've got to try to keep it compact. So we're going to get a bit creative here. We're going to place a block on the side of this block here temporarily, so we can place one block here that's right next to this torch, and a bulb on the underside of that block there. We can break that block. We'll go ahead and place redstone dust on top of both of those. That's going to power our bulb. Then we'll place another block, one diagonally down from the bulb here, with a comparator reading this bulb. From the edge of the comparator, we're going to place 3 observers facing in this direction, and then on top of that observer, 2 more observers pointing up into a block here, and that will power our piston. Now that might look like a bit of a roundabout way to get the signal there, but we need a little bit of room in here for one last thing. If we were to run this system right now, we would have an issue with the batching. So when this redstone block gets pushed across here, unlocking the batching hopper and locking the hopper before it, there is enough time while this redstone block is moving for one extra item of kelp to slip into the system here. And that's going to throw off all of this work that we're doing to measure them out nicely in bunches of 20. So we're going to take a redstone signal from somewhere else and briefly power this hopper from another position in order to keep it locked a little bit longer while the redstone block is moving across here. To do that, we are going to take a block, temporarily place it there, and another permanent one out to the side here. We can break that one now. We're going to place redstone dust on top of this block, a torch coming out of this side here, and we're going to place a repeater on top of this observer here that gets powered by the torch, and we are going to put this repeater on full delay. And that repeater is going to point into a block that we're going to place right against the side of the smoker here. So the repeater is powering this block. This block is right underneath our measuring hopper, so it is powering that hopper. And for a finishing touch, you can place blocks on top of these 3 hoppers here. That will reduce some lag. But we are not going to put a block on top of this one here, as that's where the redstone block is going to be moving back and forth. Now all we need to do is place 1 dried kelp block in the smoker here to get us started, and we are ready to go. So you can bring your input line of kelp from your kelp farm right into this line of hoppers here. I'm just going to put a barrel here for the moment. And then this hopper here, you can point that into a barrel or into another hopper line, and that's going to be our output of dried kelp fuel. When you first build this, there will be a warm-up period while all the dried kelp blocks are slowly accumulating in the smoker and in this refueling hopper. But once those are full, the surplus fuel will go through the output line and into your storage. Here we can see our reactor unit in action. The batch being measured is almost full. And now that it is full, we wait for the smoker input hopper to clear out any backlog. Now that the measured batch is full and the smoker input is clear, the batch is released. Once that batch drains out of the measuring hopper, measurement of the next batch begins, all while that previous batch is still being smelted. And the cycle continues. You're awesome, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to stay tuned. I'm the Tuned Cube, and this has been Cube Figured.